Well, happy 4th of July, and any other things you can think of to say happy, whatever, to. Do we have any other birthdays? I know we had a couple. Glenda turned, I think, 45, 50? No, anyway. You know, one of the wonderful, I guess the wonderful thing about this conference that we've had this 4th of July weekend is the fact that, you know, we're told that the Torah shall go forth from Zion. And by virtue of the fact that the speakers that we have all this weekend basically are from Eretz Israel, we're getting pure, uncut Torah from Zion. And I appreciate that very much. Thank you. And our next speaker you're very familiar with. We've had him up here once already. We're going to bring him back again. I know you'll appreciate it. Most of you know him from his teachings online, from his numerous tours, his great books, The Garden of Emunah, and I don't know anyone who stresses and continues to stress the message of Emunah and its core value and vitalness to all of our lives as our next speaker. Also now, you can hear him online on Israel National Radio. And so let's get him up here and not waste any more of his time, Rabbi Lazer Brody. Yes, sir. Get right up and a bit of a packet.
Thank you, Jim. Today, Yosef. Amen. With Hashem's loving grace, and thank you for the warm introduction, Jim. And with permission of my esteemed and honored beloved colleagues, and Ray, beloved brothers and sisters, we're going to continue. Yesterday, we spoke about Emunah, the one word that's key to our success. And today, before we depart from one another, have a 4th of July present. And the 4th of July present is real freedom. You know what real freedom is? It's not just freedom of the body. I used to tell prisoners, my first job as a rabbi, and I was chaplain and spiritual rehabilitation director of an Israeli prison. And I said, guys, 8-foot reinforced concrete all around, but the sky's open. Vertically, you're free if you want to be. We can have a free body and come and go as we like. But if we're under emotional duress, or if anything regulates our body, if we have to have a cigarette, and we have to have a cup of coffee, and we have to have a gin and tonic, or we need anything other than the Almighty, it's not freedom. It's a slave. With Hashem's loving grace, the name of today's lesson is no one but Him. I'm going to teach an expression, and it'll save your life. If you can remember this, teach an expression in Hebrew. Ein od milvado. Ein, E-I-N-O-D-M-I-L-V-A-D-O. Ein od milvado. There is no one but Him. We say this expression when we take the Torah out of the Holy Ark, before we read the Torah. Ein od milvado. There's nothing but Him. This is what Emunah does. So, my gift in departing from wonderful friends and beloved brothers and sisters, it's a special gift. Inner peace. Know where you're going to buy inner peace. Today's lesson, within the next 53, 54 minutes or so, that's exactly with God's loving grace what I'm going to give you. Inner peace. When you get inner peace, you know what else you get? No worry. Because a person who doesn't have inner peace gets no worry. You know what happens to your body when you don't worry? You live longer. You know what else happens? You fulfill your potential. If you go to any psychologist, they'll tell you that the average human being only fulfills between 10 and 11% of his personal potential. Why? Because if you look around from everyone, and what are they talking about? They're talking about the past. And many people, they're fretting about the past. Why'd I do this? Why'd I do that? Why'd I invest in this stock and not in another stock? Why'd I marry this person, not the other person? Why'd I do this? Then the people, they have regrets all the time. And when they're not regretting and fretting about the past, they're worrying about the future. What's going to be with the economy? Where's my income tomorrow? What about my business? What about my children? How am I going to pay their tuition? Hold it. Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, a beloved spiritual guide, he teaches us that the brain can only handle one task at one time. When we read on the Kabbalat Shabbat service from Psalm 94, and the Psalm that today, Hayomim b'kolo tishmo. Today, if you hear his voice. Why does King David say today? He mentions today, Hayom, Hayom. We say that in Shema. V'shinatam Hayom. Today you should teach your children. Today. Why today? Because there is nothing else in the world but today in this moment. Only today in this moment. Now, if you've ever seen the little 88-pound Korean guy, tiny little guy, and he takes his hand, stack full of cinder blocks, 8-inch cinder blocks, and he chops right through them. The little guy, 88 pounds, and he's right through the cinder blocks. How does he do it? It's deep concentration of power, and I'll explain to you. If you ever go on a date dancing with a little petite woman that's 92 pounds, but she's wearing spike heels, you better be careful. Because if you look, let's look at the pounds per square foot of pressure. That little spike heel is 4 millimeters by 4 millimeters, an eighth of an inch by an eighth of an inch. How do you put a nail in a wall? Because the hammer hits it, there's so much pressure concentrated on one tiny little point. The sharper it is, the more the nail drives through the wall. Well, the same thing with this woman's spike heel. She's a dandy little 92-pound petite, size 2. She steps on your foot, you're in the hospital, bro. You want to stay out of her way. But then if you take somebody from the Marines, Corps of Engineers, 260 pounds, he used to play linebacker for Auburn, and he's a minesweeper. And he's got these big, you ever seen Army mine shoes? They're 3 feet by 3 feet styrofoam, and they spread out the guy's weight. He could step on the stomach of a baby and not do any harm to the baby. Why? Because his weight is distributed. It's the weight of a feather per square inch. And the little tiny lady, her weight, it's the secret of also the Korean guy, it's so concentrated, it's tons. It's hundreds of tons per square inch. You multiply it out. That's the whole thing. If we are fretting about the past and worrying about the future, what's happened to the present? We have no power in the present. We don't get what we do. We don't get anything done. But if we put the past aside, what's the past? Rabbi Nachman says you can always make a new beginning. And the future, it's not here yet. Now we concentrate, what are we doing right now? And all our power is right now. And this helps us succeed right now. How can you forget about the past? And how can you not worry about the future? Ein od bilvado. No one but him. No one but him. What does that mean? Yesterday we learned, remind ourselves of what we learned yesterday, that everything comes from God. And everything's for the best, and everything's for the purpose. Stand on one foot, those are 3 principles of Munah. Everything from God, everything for the best, everything for a purpose. So if we know it's everything for the best, we don't realize it. Okay. But we had a wipeout, we're driving our Harley down the road, and had a wipeout in the Harley, say, what kind of God is that? Let me wipe out in the Harley, it was all slick. We don't understand it. Everything for the best. Down the road, you realize, wait a second. After you heard that a mile down the road, some big truck ran a red light. Okay, so nothing happened to you, got a few scratches, nothing happened to the bike, but God didn't want you to get to that next crossroads. Some people, we see this in Israel, a person runs after the bus, in Jerusalem, and he misses the bus, and he yells, "The bus driver, let me on." And the bus goes another 2 stops, and a terrorist bomb goes on it. Wow, can't believe it. Think missing the bus. It was a tragedy. No, it's the very best thing. And sometimes, most of the time, we don't see how it's the best. So when the brain kicks out, that's where emunah kicks in. When the brain kicks out, we don't understand, that's where our faith has to kick in. So whatever happened in the past, it's all for the best. And somebody complains, say, well, this one insulted me and this one here. Hey, bro, would you prefer a cardiac arrest? You know, God is a beloved God. Maybe the heavenly court has said he did this and he did that. Okay. So the Almighty gives you a little bit of peripheral aggravation instead of something major. It's all for the best. As soon as you internalize the knowledge it's all for the best, you have no regrets past. Now what about the future? How do we neutralize the future? Stop and think that the average person eats 1,000 meals a day. 365, okay, sometimes we're busy, because let's say 333 days, and eats 3 meals a day, 1,000 meals a day. Well, I can remember the times of most duress. If I think back in the Yom Kippur War, and what saved my life, that I wasn't in the bivouac on the Hermon. I was on the other side of the border, on a reconnaissance mission when the Syrians attacked. And I had to work my way, had to hide in the day, and at night walk between Syrian tanks. They overran the Golan. We didn't know if we were going to lose the country back then. It was really touch and go. I didn't lack what to eat. Here was a carob tree, and here was a spring, and you know, we learned in survival school about what weeds we could eat and what we couldn't. But I'll never forget, when I was hungry, all of a sudden I found a carobs, all of a sudden I found a grapevine. It was in October, and the grapes are supposed to finish in September. No, there was a grapevine, there were grapes. Never forget the taste of those grapes. None of us have a refrigerator with no food in it. None of us have ever been hungry. Maybe have financial difficulty, never been hungry. Now there's what's called in rabbinical law a chazaka, 3 times in a row. In other words, if a person does something 3 times in a row, a person can maybe do a misdemeanor, but if he does the same misdemeanor 3 times in a row, he is called a criminal. Because does the same thing 3 times in a row, is a criminal. For example, there's something that's called in Jewish religious law a killer bull. If you have a bull, say your neighbor's bull knocks down the fence and fights your bull, and your bull gets damaged, what happens in court, religious court? Has to pay half the damages. But if that bull butted animals or humans 3 times, it's called a killer bull, and it's got to pay not only full damages, but extra damages. So the established pattern is 3 times in a row. So really, if the Almighty fed us 3 times in a row, that means tomorrow we're going to have food too. But not only has he fed us 3 times in a row, if we're 20 years old, he's fed us 20,000 times in a row. And if we're 30 years old, he's fed us 30 times in a row. And if we're 40 years old, he's fed us 40,000 times in a row. Now stop and think what it looks like. We say, where am I going to get my food tomorrow? And the Almighty's looking down. He said, my beloved son and daughter, what do I have to do to make you trust me? And it's only your food? What about the heartbeat? Average heartbeat 70 times a minute? 4,200 times an hour? 100,000 times a day? 700,000 times a week? About 3 million times a month? And that's at rest. That's not if you're running and you're jogging. 36 million times a year? By the time a child is 10 years old, 360 million times. By the time a person is 30 years old, the heart has beat 1 billion times. And that is the Almighty personally massaging the heart. He alone. No one but him. Nobody's plugged in a gas station. Nobody's plugged into a socket of the wall. Did anybody this morning say thank you to the Almighty for their heartbeat? Blue Cross Blue Shield, thank you to the Almighty, knowing that no one but him, that's the best health insurance you ever have. Because sometimes, you know why people have heart troubles? Because they don't appreciate what they have. And it's not good It's a blemish on the soul when we don't appreciate. An ingrate, there's nothing worse. That does damage to the soul. Terrible damage. We know with no one but Him, and we thank Him for everything we do, we stay spiritually healthy. I want to tell you a little story. This is a story, it's a parable I heard from my very close friend, colleague, Rabbi Zachariah Wallerstein in New York. It tells a parable about a young man that was married to a blind girl. And this young man, he was so good to his wife. She was a gorgeous girl. She was just blind, but she had everything else. She had a fantastic personality and intelligent and interesting. They had a wonderful marriage, wonderful relationship. And he was literally her eyes. He would take her for walks in the evening, and he would describe the birds. You hear, sweetheart, those birds chirping? That's the Texas whippoorwill, and that's a bobwhite. And here, this one's got these little white feathers, and that's why it's called bobwhite. And he described the daffodils, and he described the black-eyed Susan. It's funny. That black-eyed Susan's a state flower in Maryland, where I was born. Come here in Texas, they're 10 times bigger than the ones in Maryland. I got a kick out of that. Everything big in Texas. He described all these wonderful things, that she'd be animated. She was so happy with her husband. She didn't feel she lacked eyes. She had this loving husband, and he gave her everything. Well, they had a beautiful life together. One day, they heard that the specialist from Heidelberg in Germany was coming to Dallas, and he specialized in something new. You know, you can have a liver transplant, a kidney transplant, a heart transplant, a lung transplant. But this eye specialist now could make eye transplants. So the husband found out, and he showed, he said, sweetheart, you know, there's an article in the paper, the specialist from Heidelberg in Germany, and they've discovered how to make eye transplants. He says, I'm going to give you the ultimate gift. You're going to get an eye transplant. You get 2 eyes, you're going to be able to see. She was so excited. What do you mean, see? You mean I'll be able to see and experience all the things you've been describing? Everything? Yes, sweetheart, can you imagine? Well, he comes, and she's excited, and the day comes, and they bring her into Dallas General. Guy takes a lot of money for things, but you know, what's money for his wife? You know, what's $100,000? In fact, she could see $100,000 for eyes, that's cheap. You know, our eyes are worth much more than $50,000 a piece. We wouldn't sell our eyes for $1 million. So she has the operation. The operation is successful, and she has a mask on her face for a week, and then little by little they take the mask off so she can adjust her eyes to the light. It takes another week before she can see the light. After 3 weeks, she come home, she can see perfectly. And what does she discover? She discovered that her husband walks around with a white cane. She says, sweetheart, you're blind. And he says, oh, okay. He said, but you know, you treat him out. I always thought you had eyes, the way you describe things and this, that. He says, well, I've got a good imagination. You know, it's like you, and never let you know. He says, you're amazing. You're amazing. I can't believe you're blind. I never felt that you were blind. You never complained. You never did. Okay, fine. So he's blind. He's got his computer with a Braille keyboard. Guy makes a nice living at home on his computer. He doesn't have to go anywhere. So meanwhile, the wife, she's at home, and she's with her blind husband. And one day she says, now, sweetheart, you're working. Do you mind if I go for a walk? And the wife says, go right ahead. Enjoy your new eyes. She goes to the walk in the park, and she meets some girlfriends her age. They say hello. Who are you? Yeah, you're the lady with the new eyes. Then she befriends friends in the park. Another day or two goes by, and they say to her, well, you know, why don't you come out in the evening with the girls? We go to dinner, we go to a movie, have a good time. She comes home and says, sweetheart, do you mind if I go out with the girls for an evening? He says, go right ahead, by all means. I'll work, you go enjoy it. Have a good time. So she goes and have a good time with the girls. Little by little, she was less and less at home, and more on the outside. And the girls took her, and she discovered nightclubs and discotheques and dancing and beer. All of a sudden there's other men. And there's other men that could do all kinds of things, and her husband's at home blind. I mean, he said he could take a walk in the park with his cane, but most of the time he's sitting by his keyboard in Braille. One day she comes home and she says, "Darling, can I talk to you?" He says, "What do you mean, can you talk to me?" "Of course you can." So she sits down and she says to him, "You know, I'm not so happy." He said, "What do you mean you're not so happy? You used to take walks and this, and you'd love it, and you'd say how happy you are." He says, "Yeah, but you know, there's a whole big world out there. And I'm kind of, I feel like a bird in a golden cage. You know, you're a wonderful husband and you give me everything, but there's so much I want to do. And darling, I'm limited with you." So he's got a little tear in his blind eye and he says, "What are you driving at, sweetheart? Come on, you can tell it to me straight." And she says, "You know, I'll always love you, but I feel trapped and I feel choked." He says, "What are you trying to tell me?" He says, "I want a divorce." Silence for about 2 minutes. And he got a little tear from his other blind eye. And he says to her, "Darling, you know, I love you so much, I'm not going to stand in your way. All I care about is your happiness. You know, you go and whatever you do, you go with my blessing." And she says, "Well, I know you're the greatest, and believe me, I didn't want to do it, but I can't. If I'm frustrated, I'm not good for me, and I'm not good for you." So that night, she packed up her things and she moved out to her own apartment. They went through and they got a divorce. He didn't contest anything. He said, "Take whatever you want, do whatever you want, whatever you like." And they got a divorce right away. And then he sat down at his Braille keyboard and he wrote her a letter. And here's the letter he wrote her. He says, "My dearest sweetheart, even though we're not married, you have to know I still love you. But there's something you ought to know when you're starting your new life. Those beautiful aqua blue eyes you have were mine. When a German specialist came, I donated the eyes to you. So you just take that with you, and you know there was nothing more I could have given you. So I wish you the very best, and you go your own path. But this is something I need to tell you. Beloved brothers and sisters, do you know who the ingrate wife is? Sorry to tell you, it's us. It's all of us. Because we come into the world blind as a bat, with a body that's nothing, made out of fertilizer, nitrogen, potassium, calcium. And what are we? And who gives us the power to see? Who gives us the eyes? The Almighty. He gives us eyes of spirituality. Only Him. No one but Him. Nobody else gives us the power to see. And we ask ourselves, is He there? Is He not there? And what do we devote our lives to? We devote our lives to drinking beer and to going to ball games and to dance in the discotheque. But what about Him? What about Him? Who gave us the power to see? Who gave us our souls? Our souls give us the power to see, not only physically see, but our imagination. There's two sides to the imagination. There's the dark side and the light side. The holy side of our imagination allows us to feel and to understand godliness. That is our purpose on this earth. Because the Midrash tells us that there's two parts of us. We've got the physical part of us that's just like an animal. But there's a difference between a man and an animal. An animal won't kill out of spite. Animal kills for self-defense, or kills for food. And when a man acts like an animal, he's much lower than an animal. But we got a flip side to us. We have a spiritual side. It's part of an angel. If you could take whatever the human soul is made out of, that little flame, and magnify it, that's what the angels are made of. So tells us Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai in the Zohar, so tells us the Midrash. But when we take our bodies and we uplift them in spirituality, we become above the angels. A human who calls God's name is above the angels. A human who walks around with emunah, with a pure and simple faith in God, is above the angels. And when we connect with God, we enhance our capabilities, we enhance our potential beyond limitation. Our imagination, our ability to think, our ability to do whatever we want to do. Because God is a loving God. Now let me tell you something else. A lot of people are walking around with jealousy. When you know Ein Od Bilvado, there's no one but Him, there's no need for jealousy. Why? Why did He create every single one of us? Well, I know maybe they have snow in Dallas. You get snow ever in Dallas? Maybe up in the mountains, but down here, wherever there's snow, I know they taught us in Maryland maybe every other year. Maryland's the most northern of the southern states. And sometimes we get northern weather and sometimes southern weather. But when I was a kid, they taught us that, and it's true, that the Almighty created every little snowflake unique. I don't know, they don't say Almighty in the schools anymore. I have a very good friend, Judge Roy Moore, who used to be the Chief Justice in Alabama. And Judge Roy Moore read the Constitution, one nation under God. And he said, well, our law, it comes from the Ten Commandments. It's all derived from the Ten Commandments. So he put the Ten Commandments in his courthouse. And the Supreme Court in 2006 told him to take the Ten Commandments down. He says, what do you mean? Our founding fathers, they created this country according to the Ten Commandments. This is something maybe we could say, I didn't plan on saying this, but this is July 4th. And they said, no, that's talking, you're pushing religion. He said, what do you mean pushing religion? What's one nation under God? What's the First Amendment in the Constitution? Our God-given right. I mean, why do we not kill, and why do we not steal, and why do we not lie? That's all Ten Commandments. Take it down. He refused to take down Ten Commandments. He was disbarred. He gave up his position as Chief Justice in Alabama, not take down Ten Commandments. So I don't think they mention the Almighty in schools anymore. It's against, they think it's against everything's topsy-turvy. And maybe, just maybe, that's the key to America's problems. If they turn on the Almighty, that's it. Ein Od Bilvado, no one but Him. I mean, listen guys, we're not winning the game, we're not winning the economic game, and we're not winning wars. So maybe we should check our game plan, change the coach. Maybe it's time to come back to God. That's Ein Od Bilvado. That's our job. Now what happens? What do we do as soon as we come back to God? You get three things. Inner peace, you can't imagine. This I'll give you really quick. Chapter 6, 7, 8 in the Trail of Tranquility. It's a book that the Almighty gave us the privilege of writing. 3 levels of peace are peace with yourself, peace with your fellow man, and peace with the Almighty. Now, as soon as you know that everything comes from the Almighty, you're at peace with yourself. What's the problem with people? They say, and I'll tell you the evil inclination that you don't know how to talk about it yourself. You don't know how to put your finger on it. Big Brother Lazer will tell you. Self-persecution. You look yourself in the mirror, I'm not good enough. You are good enough. You're the very best. There is no one like you. There is no one with the same soul as you. Just like God creates every snowflake unique. He takes every person unique. Suppose there's somebody here in Dallas that you don't like, and you heard there was a bank robbery. So you take a picture of First National Bank of Dallas and you Photoshop their face into the bank robber. You go to the Texas State Police and say, I got the bank robber. And here's a person, your neighbor, that neighbor you really don't like, whose dogs rip up your roses in your garden. Okay, here you are, sir. Here it is. Goes into court. Guess what, folks? In the state of Texas, photography is inadmissible evidence. Did y'all know that? Now there's Photoshop. The judges say, no, there's Photoshop. But what happens if they scrape your fingerprints off that vault? Now explain how they got there. You know what they used to say back home. Now explain that you don't have a sister. You can't. Why? This is the Almighty's signature on every one of us. And what does it mean? Why does it go to trouble creating every single fingerprint unique? It's to show that the body is the housing of the soul. Every single soul is unique. Every single soul has its own talents and aptitudes that no one else has. Which means that every single man and woman is God's only son and only daughter. And it doesn't matter if you got 10 kids. God forbid if you lose one of them, it's not a consolation that you've got 9 more. If a person lost a finger, you're going to console him, he's got another 9 fingers. No, that whole hand hurts. When the hand hurts, the whole body hurts. The Almighty has no consolation when he loses a son and daughter, when they go away from him. Now just imagine, in the days of cell phone and the days of email nowadays, you send one of your kids up north to some Ivy League school, to medical school, or to law school. You know, you want to go to Princeton or Yale. Doesn't need to go north. Let them stay in Texas. Plenty of good schools in Texas. But suppose. And you send your child up north, and he's got his cell phone, and he's got his iPod, iShmod, whatever it is. He's got his notebook, and he's got his thing with Yahoo or Gmail. No problem. Got here safely, Ma. Or text message. You know, people here walk around with their thumbs like this. Thumbs. Hey, husbands, whatever you do, don't text message at breakfast, because that's showing your wife that the BlackBerry is more important than her. Okay? And I'm going to remind you something else. Your wife's a daughter of God, right? So if she's a daughter of God, who's your father-in-law? You going to mess around with the father-in-law like that? Okay, you know. Number 1. Read the Garden of Peace and learn she's number 1. All right, so you send your son or daughter up north, and you go to Princeton, New Jersey, or they're in Yale and Connecticut, and the first day goes by, you don't hear anything. And you think, well, wait a second, maybe, you know, by the time they got off the plane, by the time they got to school, and got the shuttle bus, got here, got there. Second day, you don't hear a word. Well, second day's registration. You remember back when, you know, we went to University of Texas in Austin, what a crazy chaos registration day was. Third day, you don't hear a word. Well, maybe the first day of classes, and you're running from this class to that class, and finding your classes in this building, you run across campus. Fourth day, well, maybe no word. Well, they're getting ready in the dorm, they didn't fix up the dorm room. Fifth day, you run out of excuses. Text messages, I don't get. An email, I don't get. A phone call? You have the cell phone? Sixth day, you're hiring a private detective, send him up north. Where's my son and daughter? How do you think the Almighty feels when a day goes by when he doesn't hear from his beloved son or daughter? And it doesn't matter that he's got another couple million or billion. It doesn't matter. He wants to hear from each one of us. And that's what we spoke about yesterday, your own personal connection. Because you're your own daughter. Nobody can do what you do. Nobody. It's not a consolation to God that he hears from 10 other, or 100 other, 1,000 other. If he doesn't hear from Bill or Jimmy or Connie or Donna or Barbara, he's got to hear from every single one, because every one is a beloved child. You know your own children. Time goes by, you don't hear from them. What's going on? And the Almighty is so much more, 1,000,000 times more loving parent than the most loving parent among us. You have to know that there's no one but him. Everything comes from him. Our heartbeat, our eyes, every breath we take, every morsel of food we eat, every step we take. And it's all we have to appreciate. It's a gift from him. We realize that life is so many gifts. We walk around with a smile on our face. Nothing in the world can make you happy like Emunah. Knowing that there's nothing but him, no one but him. Nobody can make me walk. Nobody gives me the air I breathe, the sunshine, the birds chirping. So many blessings that we just take for granted. And okay, so we have a difficulty in life. We have a little difficulty in life. So why do we get difficulties in life? Why does the Almighty, this loving Father, Lazer's describing this loving Father, why does he give us difficulties in life? Let me tell you something. And this is what the Torah says. And nothing knows the human soul like the Torah. Because the Torah is God's blueprint for the Word. The Torah says when it's fat city, when a person has everything, just imagine you have all the money you need, and you got a great marriage, and you have wonderful kids. You go to PTA meeting, and the PTA meeting lasts for 4 minutes. They tell you how wonderful your kids are. Okay? And your grandchildren, your kids, your daughters-in-law, you got perfect daughters-in-law that honor you and respect you. Not that. Everything's perfect. Your job is perfect. Your boss loves you. Your clients love you. You know what happens? We would be so arrogant. Our noses would be so high in the air. You know, it's fat city. The Torah says, Vayishman Yeshua Vayivad. That when a person has a fat city, he kicks. I don't need God. I'm the man. Muhammad Ali, fly like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Yeah, you say, I'm the man. Look what happens to him. He ends up with Parkinson's and he shakes like a leaf. No belief, you shake like a leaf. That's it. Because if you fear one, you fear no one. Remember that. Nothing can scare you. Nothing can scare you. And we're not angry at anything. If the IRS gets on our cage, it's not the IRS. If we're driving down the freeway and Texas State Patrol pulls on the side, stop and think, wait a second. I am now being judged by the heavenly court. What did I do wrong? Lord Almighty, what did I do wrong? Aha. I didn't give a tithe last month. Maybe I should have given $300 charity. Made $3,000 last month, didn't give any charity. Ooh, $300, that's the exact price of a ticket. Oh, good Lord, I realize I sinned. You know something? If I get off without a ticket, that $300 is going to charity. I know I'm going to give it a ticket anyway. And a ticket, I don't get any reward for paying that traffic ticket. Okay. All of a sudden, you'll see the guy comes up and says, sir, let me see your driver's license, registration. Do you know that you were going 75 miles an hour or 55 miles an hour? And you don't argue with him. No one but him. The state policeman is only, state trooper is a representative of God. God sent him. And say something, officer, I'm aware of that and I'm really sorry about that. And I'm going to do my best. I know I deserve whatever you give me, and I'm going to do my very best not to do that ever again. The officer looks at you, says, you have any prior tickets? Looks in, clean record this year. He says, I'm going to let you off this time. But you be careful. Now you run to the bank and pay that $300, give it to the best charity you can. You see this all the time. When you live your life together with God, you see big miracles. And you see the world completely different. Completely different. We have seen people, and I would sound, I'm embarrassed to talk about it. The miracles we see wherever we go, people that have beat the rap of terminal diseases. I can tell you all kinds of stories about it. As David, as Joseph, Minneapolis and Miami and Denver, everywhere we go. People that have established their own personal relationship with Hashem. Why? Because all our troubles in life are nothing but wake-up calls. My beloved son and daughter, come on home. I miss you. I need you. Where are you? Come on home. So as soon as we come home and as soon as we develop our own personal relationship with the Almighty, He doesn't need the wake-up call anymore. Person gets in debt, tries and uses his own cunning in business. And he gets more in debt, tries to go to the bank for a loan. Gets even more in debt, he does everything except turn to the Almighty. Person has a problem with a health problem, he goes to this doctor, then to this doctor. This doctor spends umpteens amount of money, does everything except go to the Almighty. Person has a problem with a child. Nowadays they have, when we were kids growing up, there wasn't ADD and ADHD. I remember we were little kids. I grew up, I was born about the time of the Korean War. And it was post-World War II. And our folks didn't have any money. I'll never forget the best toys I ever had as a kid. My father would cut out cardboard boxes and wrap them in aluminum foil and make swords and shields and said, okay, kids, we're now King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. I'm 5 years old, playing with Daddy, King Arthur and Knights of the Round Table. None of my brothers and sisters, we didn't have ADHD because the parents gave us attention. But now what do people do? They don't teach their kids about God. They don't give attention. That God is a loving Father, gives us attention. Every single heartbeat, we learn from Him. Every single breath, it comes from Him, and you feel it. The Talmud tells King David how every single breath we take says God's name. The very last passage in Psalm 150, Kol Shema Televka, that the soul shall praise your name. If we add the first letter of Hashem's name, Shema, we get Neshima, which is a breath. That's Hashem giving us every single breath we take. Hashem personally massaging our heart. So if everything comes from Hashem is one-stop shopping. It's the best mall. You got all these confusing stores. They took us to see the mall yesterday. All these confusing stores got one interest, another. I've never seen such a labyrinth. It was crazy. I mean, I was a recon in Israeli Special Forces. I have no great sense of direction, but that mall was just confusing. Boop, 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 and the butters and lights, and some buffalo jumps out of one shore, and a gorilla comes out of another shore, and then jump. These crazy things, the people, and the Brazilian dancers, and it was really confusing. I didn't know which way it was. If it weren't for David, that he knows Dallas a little bit, and get us in one end, come out in the other, is like a rat in a maze. But the only way to get through life, Ein od milvado, no one but God, only Him. And you see this, He's talking to us all the time. I mean, listen to a popular song, it's Him talking to us. You got a trouble, and people look, they run to the lawyer, they run to the CPA, they run to the doctor. How about trying Him? Hey, listen to Carole King's song. She doesn't know about it, she's talking about Hashem. You just call my name, and you know wherever I am, I'll come running. 24/7, winter, spring, summer, or fall. All you got to do is call, and I'll be there. Rabbi Nachman said last night, when we call Hashem's name, He drops everything He's doing and He listens to His beloved son and daughter. He's always there. He doesn't sound busy. He is always there. And that's the amazing thing about God. He's there for each and every one of us. Now, you know what that does? Just the knowledge that He's there, and the knowledge that we don't have to fret about the past because everything happened for the very best. And something that was seemingly bad, you look down in the road, perspective of time, you see it was for the best. And so we don't have to worry about the future because the Almighty's got a great track record. That gives us great inner peace. No worry, I'm free to concentrate on what I need to do right now. That takes the stress away, that takes the worry away. As soon as no more stress, no more worry, the brain is free to think, free to imagine, free to do daring things. The heart works so easily. More blood reaches the oxygen, more oxygen reaches the brain. You feel better. You function better. You can live a healthy life with no substances and eat right. And not the junk food with all the chemicals. It all goes together. There's something else. That's a completely different thing. But if you want to know how to eat, there's real good, easy lesson to learn what to eat. That the closer it is to the way the Almighty created it, the healthier it is. The more that the factories get their mini fingers in it, the more they mess it up. That's to put money in their pocket, not to put health in our bodies. Even all this stuff, we come to America, and I know back home in Israel, breakfast is avocado, tomato, cucumber, whole wheat bread, glass of water, herb tea, and come here and we see, put a cornflakes and Cheerios and Wheatios and all this kind of stuff, and all this processed flour with these vitamins, all these vitamins, the liquid vitamins, all they do is, a doctor once told me, they just make a person's waste all the richer because the body can't absorb it. There's much difference between a vitamin C in a tomato and an orange than the vitamin C in a pill. Doesn't work the same. Everything from him. King Solomon said that the Almighty created a person simple. He used the word straight. Elokim barat adam yashar. V'hema bikshu cheshbonot rabim. And they complicated things. They confused things. We have to get back when a basketball team is losing and a good coach, what to do? Forget the plays. First, a whole week of just physical fitness. They're going to run around the court. Second week, just passing the ball. Third week, just dribbling the ball, getting back to basics. We have difficulty in life, timeout on life's court, getting back to the basics. The back to basics are ein od milvado. There's no one but him. Now that I remind myself that there's no one but him, I don't have to worry, because not a single person can touch a hair on my head. Now ask and think. You can fake it for a minute. You can fake it for 10 minutes. You can fake it for a half hour. But how long we've been together? This is Monday, and we got here Friday afternoon. Okay, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Somebody came up to me yesterday, and they said, Rabbi Lazer, you're always smiling. I said, yeah, how about it? Was there a reason not to smile? There's no one but him. That makes me feel great. He says, but you really always smile. I said, not faking it, that's a real thing. And he says, you really live in the south of Israel? I said, yeah, I live in the south of Israel. You really live 20 minutes from Gaza? Yeah, I live 20 minutes from Gaza. You mean the Katyusha rockets really fall on your head? Well, not on my head, but the Almighty has a way that they fall in open fields, and they fall here, and they fall on the beach, and whatever. But I know it's not the Hamas, and it's not Hezbollah. There's no one but him. And that's all wake-up calls to bring us closer to him. Now, what does all this mean to us as Noahites? If you know that there's no one but him, and privately speaking to people, I mean, I've learned so much. I learned from everyone. And hearing things that are really a common denominator between a lot of people. And people tell me stories. They said, you can't understand the disparagement that we receive from our family and from our friends, and the way we're like outcasts. I even have people here in this room ask me a question, Rabbi Lazer, what do I do when I firmly believe in God, I firmly believe in the Torah, and my wife is still, she's an evangelistic Christian. You know what my suggestion is? I said, don't proselytize. And don't convince anyone. Don't try and convince. I mean, you go around and you're happy. You don't hear a word come out of my mouth trying to convince anyone. I didn't say the word Judaism since I've been here. Anybody heard me say Judaism? No. No. Anybody, the way I look, okay, the way I look the way, it's the way the Rebbe Nachman of Breslov dressed, and the way Rebbe Natan dressed, and it's a tradition. I dress according to tradition. I want to keep tradition in my family. That doesn't mean it. This is the way you got to do it. You know, if it weren't for Rebbe Nachman, I'd just be happy, you know, wearing a Stetson and a pair of jeans. I love Stetsons, to tell you the truth. Okay, but I wear the black hats. This is where Rebbe Nachman. But when you go and you're connected with God, it gives you confidence. You don't need to tell anyone else. You don't need to tell your wife if you're a Noahide and she's an evangelist, or the opposite. If your husband's an evangelist and you're a Noahide, or anything, or your parents are holy rollers and you're a Noahide, you know, and they do somersaults down the aisle in church, you don't have to convince them. But what do? You show your husband or your wife or your parents that your belief in God always keeps that smile on your face. And every single weekend, you pick up the phone to your parents, to your in-laws, and you say, beloved folks, have a wonderful weekend. They don't hear that from their other kids, and they certainly don't hear that from their other sons-in-law, daughters-in-law. Show them how your connection to God makes you a happier person, a better person, a more considerate husband, and you know what? They know what their faith is. What's real faith? Real faith is faith that holds up under fire. When the Katyushas are falling, you can still have a smile on your face. Because you know, it's up to God. It's up to God. I don't worry about that. I don't worry about the economy. I don't worry about the Katyushas. All I worry about is what I got to do, which is serving God and doing His commandments. Don't have to convince someone else. I'm confident in what I do. All right? But I want to share the wealth. Share the wealth. I'm hiding it for myself. One thing that makes me sad when, beloved, I love humanity. Every person, my beloved brother and sister. I don't like the people suffer. One thing that the Almighty gave me a gift was a strong heart. Because I take people's problems to heart. If I didn't have a strong heart, I couldn't handle it. If you just see my mailbox in one day, and this one the terminal diseases, and this one about the divorce, and this one with a child, special needs, I don't know. If I didn't take every day as it was, I couldn't handle it. I'd think ahead of time, wow, what kind of letters are we going to get? But the Almighty gave me a heart where I can handle it. And I want to see everyone smiling. I want you happy. And if you've got a emunah and you realize it's nothing from Hashem, you're going to have great kids and you have a great marriage. You know why? You can't tell your children, you got to believe and you got to do. No, that doesn't hold water. The only way to influence other people, whether it's your children, whether it's your spouse, whether it's your folks, whether it's your neighbors, is personal example. When they're going to see this person is so confident and so together and so charismatic. Why? He doesn't worry. He's got a smile on his face. People gravitate to a person like that. And he's not worried. And he can always have the strength, he or she can always have the strength to console someone else, give them a listening ear. And they say, what is it that makes that person so special? You know, that person has a direct line to the Almighty. Oh, how do they do it? Oh yeah, there's 7 Noahide mitzvahs. You are a walking advertisement. You don't have to send out emails, join the organization. You don't have to proselytize. You don't have to be a missionary. All the missionaries, they don't believe in what they're doing. It's all a matter of money and power. It's not a matter of belief in God, because the missionary wants you to believe in him and his organization. We don't mention our organization. Do one thing that I hope we stay in touch. The only thing I'll mention our 2 websites where you can see every week fresh teachings, fresh books. This is www.breslev.co.il. That's the Breslev Israel website. Articles on the editor of the English website. We have 7 languages. And I have my own personal website. And beloved brothers and sisters, you're more than welcome to stay in touch. And that's www.lazerbrody, LAZERBRODY.net. It's called Laser Beams. And with greatest pleasure. But that's just to stay in touch. It's not because we're trying to sell anybody any bit of goods or trying to convince them to be this or otherwise. Because my whole job, I don't even call myself a rabbi. I've got ordinations from 4 different rabbinical courts. And I've got advanced degrees in our version of divinity. But spiritual guide. What do? I don't mention religion. I don't talk about religion. All I talk about is connecting you with God. And once you're connected with God, Big Brother Lazer's down the road. The good Lord's going to take you where you need to go. On your own particular path. And you got to know, Donna's path is not Barbara's path. And Barbara's path is not Mary's path. And Mary's path is not Jimmy's path. And Jimmy's path is not Billy John's path. Everyone has their own path because they got their own special soul and their own aptitudes and their own abilities and their own talents. That's why from this moment on, we shouldn't be jealous of a single human on earth. Because if he's got more money or less money, the Almighty gives us exactly what we need to serve him. Now, have you ever seen a Massey Ferguson tractor that's jealous of a Mercedes? You're not going to see it. Can a Mercedes plow a cornfield? But it would look kind of stupid if you went up to Dallas-Fort Worth International in a Massey Ferguson picking up a visiting diplomat. Okay? You won't find an F-15 jealous of a Boeing 747. An F-15, you could barely, pilot sits in the cockpit. and his knees are up close to his chest, and the co-pilot, and who's navigator, co-pilot can barely squeeze in behind him. I mean, it's really tight. Okay, 747, 550 people. 747 can't defend the skies, and F-15 can. By the same token, it's completely inane when one of us is jealous of someone else. Why be jealous? They got their job to do. Different strokes for different folks. They got their job to do. I got my job to do. Okay? Doesn't matter how much this person eats or doesn't eat. We can only eat 3 meals a day. We have our job to do because the Almighty gave us our own job. He gave us our unique soul, and that is a little part of Him. And that's what gives us happiness. Just to know that it's me and Him. I'm His only son. I'm His only daughter. You remember the old song by the Turtles? Imagine me and you. I do. I think about you day and night. It's only right. Remember that? To think about the God you love with all your might. So happy together. That's all. If I could call your name, the rest of the words. But it's all. This is the happiness of the soul. This puts a smile on the face. Doesn't matter where we are, whatever we're doing. It's our own, your own, my own personal God who loves us more than we can ever imagine. And if we knew how much He loved us, we'd dance. And you heard people go in, people that are not Jewish and not Noahides, but people that had the NDEs, the near-death experience, go and Google it. You can see pictures on YouTube. People describe this, and they all describe the same white light. And it's not what the evangelists say. There's no purgatory and burning fire. You know what the purgatory is? It's the embarrassment. You know, when we're embarrassed, the cheeks feel like they're on fire. We come to the next world, and the minute the soul leaves the body, yells out, give me another chance. Why didn't I understand? The soul realizes the minute it comes out this excruciating, realize how loving, sees the white light that everybody describes. The loving, happy white light that just caresses the room. I like to describe it beyond description. Everybody talks about it. People have never had a day's religion in their life. And they talk about what happened when they had the near-death experience. And there's something about people that had NDEs. When they all come back, and they put back here, they all become, quote, religious, unquote. What does it mean? They have a connection with God. They all become more spiritual. They all become more because they understand it's not just about the body. The parable of the husband and the wife, where the wife is the body and the husband is the soul that gives the body the ability to see that gift from God. And now she thinks it's all about her. It's not about you, sweetheart. You know whose eyes you're walking around in? We're walking around with the eyes of God inside of us. And that's what we ought to love each other, because every one of us is a tiny little part of God. And you remember this, and you remember Ein Od Milvado, that there was no one but Him, and I guarantee you're going to have 120 years happiness. You're going to have a great marriage, and you have great kids, because the personal example that you set for everyone around you, they're going to want a piece of action. This person's really got it together. He's charismatic. She's charismatic. I want to be like them. And with God's loving grace, we shall be from this room personal examples to the whole world. And the way to do it, we got to spread Emunah. We have to teach everyone that there's no one but Him. And how do we do it? We do it gently. Don't have to convince. Take a CD, put it in their hand. Take a book, God, I'm going to put it in their hand. We're still here for how long? Another hour or two. Last chance while we're here, to pick up some books and CDs if you like, and spread it around the people you love. It's when you bring a lost soul back to the Almighty, the Talmud tells us measure for measure, turn for a turn. We call it the Atfad principle, a turn for a turn. The Almighty will bring everything you need. And beloved brothers and sisters, Dallas, and wherever you're from, people from all over the state, Abilene and Wichita and Texarkana, wherever you are, may Almighty bless you and your loved ones. Chrysler Corporation gives you 50,000 miles or 5 years, whichever comes first. And Brother Lazer gives you 160 years of Mashiach, whichever comes last. Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi Brody.
Open my lips to sing your praise, my heart to feel the joy. Let me have the gift for which I'm yearning. Another night in Israel. Desert flowers blooming in the spring, the grapes upon the vine. Let me walk the beaches in the moonlight. Let me fall in love in Israel.